We do have beliefs that feel good to us because those beliefs are based on past experiences, and those emotions keep us attached to the belief chemically. It's in our biology. And we tend to think neurologically and feel chemically within experiences then that are connected to the past. So when our beliefs are challenged, we hold on to the emotion, like, Jesus had a brother? What? That doesn't feel right. He was married to Mary Magdalene? What? People freak out because they've been conditioned, and they want to hold on to that because that then ensures a future that they can rely on. When you step out of your belief systems and stepping into the unknown, you are now leaving behind your past. And then do you have the faculty and the ability to create? Do you have that ability? If not, because then in order for you to go from that old belief to a new belief, then you better have a plan. And you better be willing to have a new experience that is no longer a wishy-washy belief. It has to be a very strong impression in your biology. It comes with an accompanying experience that then changes your biology to understand you believe something else. But that's not the end either, because then you have to question from that point, what is the next belief that helps you to understand the next thing? For example, let's talk about it on two levels, and time out here for a second. I don't care. We can go to 11:30 here.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much.
It was a good conversation. So think about this. The person in our work who, I'll use a simple example, has a very, very difficult marriage. And her marriage falls apart. Her husband was abusive and lived by the stress hormones for an extended period of time. Of course, all her energy is going for some threat in her external environment. She has no energy in her internal environment for growth and repair. No energy for long-term building projects. The body is in vigilance. It's always anxious. She's anticipating something bad happening all the time. And she's got food allergies to everything. She's allergic to her environment. She comes to the event, she does the work, it takes her 3 months, and all of a sudden, in one event, she has a breakthrough, and she's eating anything she wants. Now, she's changed her belief about her past because she's no longer saying, I am this way because of my relationship with my husband. See, because when you say, I am this way because I had an abusive father, I am this way because I had a difficult marriage, I am this way because I got fired from my job, what you're saying is, I haven't changed since that event emotionally. And so now you're viewing your future through the lens of the past. When you overcome that emotional state, a memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom. Now you're ready to create a new future, because if you're still attached to the emotion, you're still attached to the past, and you can't create a future. Right. So all of a sudden now the person has a transformation. She has a shift. She knows that she's liberated from that anxiety. She feels it. And as a result of it, in a matter of moments, Ben, her biology reorganizes to a new mind. And now I'm watching her eat pizza, I'm watching her eat a hamburger, she's laughing, and it's sustained. But that's not the end. Because if she's healed herself, then the next question is, I understand the physics and biology of what I've done. Is it possible if I heal myself that I can heal another person? Now my belief is being challenged again. Now I'm challenging my current belief. Is it possible? Well, I don't know. I haven't had the experience yet, but if I'm thinking it and I understand the semantic, philosophical, theoretical, intellectual information, can I initiate it? Can I apply it? Can I personalize it? Can I demonstrate it? Can I modify my behavior in some way based on my last experience to have a more evolved experience? And that more evolved experience will be outside of my beliefs currently, but I understand the science, and if I can get my behaviors to match my intentions, and I've done it to myself, and quantum physics says is that consciousness is non-local, well, hell, if I can create a coherent signature here, I should be able to do it in another person. So then when the experience occurs, now I have more circuitry in my brain that's enriched, I have a new feeling in my body, and I feel like a healer. I already feel like a healer because I've healed myself, but let me see if I can heal someone else. I'm going to bring up that emotion, and it may take me a few times. And I'm telling you, That woman, we did a coherent session where we're healing another person, and the person laying down there was a woman from London who had a exposure to a bacteria in India 20 years ago, who had food allergies and couldn't overcome that bacteria. And I watched this woman synchronistically, unbeknownst to the woman laying down there, lay a coherent energy in that person's body, and that woman was healed. I had dinner with her in London, and she was eating salmon and rice and everything else, and she said, I don't know what happened, but I got healed. Now that person who did the healing, her belief was challenged, and because she had the experience, she asked the greater question. So the greater question then led to the next experience, but it's not enough to do it once. You got to be able to repeat that experience. You got to make it scientific.
Right.
You got to make it a skill. And this is where people stop. Like, they have the one experience and say, I'm a healer. No. The fact that you have the experience means you should be able to reproduce that. So then you keep pushing the boundaries of your beliefs. That's called evolution. And so people reach a certain point in their belief systems and they stop. And so I think the problem with a lot of people in the spiritual community is they confuse insight with belief. Like, oh, you know, I have anxiety, so the reason I have anxiety because of a chemical imbalance in my brain. That's what my doctor told me. And I get panic attacks, and I got a panic attack on a plane, and I'm afraid of planes and crowded places. And so now that you know that you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, does it heal your anxiety? No. So then they go to the psychologist, they go to their friend says, well, it's not a hardware problem, it's not circuits and molecules and chemicals. It's a software problem. You know, your father was overbearing, he was a perfectionist, and it's a programming, you know, it's from your past. And the person now has the insight that their father was overbearing. Does it heal the anxiety? But they will see that as a belief, like my father was overbearing, which they're really saying is, I am this way because of this past experience. So then they go to the psychic, and the psychic says you were burned at the stake in Carcassonne in the 1500s, you're a charismatic Christian, the memory's burned in your soul. Now that you know that you were a charismatic Christian from the 1500s, a Cathar, a Templar, does it heal your anxiety? No. So then you go to the astrologer, and she says, you know, Mercury's in retrograde, don't leave the house for 6 months. It's the reason the way you are. And so they develop beliefs that are within their emotional acceptance. And so then they build more beliefs within those emotions, which means I still don't want to change. The insight doesn't change anything, because people will only accept, believe, and surrender to beliefs or thoughts that are equal to their emotional state, and they'll program their autonomic nervous system into that destiny. So then you get a diagnosis from a doctor, it creates the emotion of fear or desperation. You'll only accept, believe, and surrender to the thoughts equal to those emotional states. Until you change your emotional state, is it possible for you then to begin to accept, believe, and surrender to the thoughts equal to a new emotional state and bring up the emotion ahead of the experience? Now we're talking about going against conditioning. Well, I think it's a complex answer. I think the first part of the answer is if people are really, really believing that their astrological sign determines their destiny, then they will look for, based on their perception, the correlations that are equal to their belief system. I don't particularly believe that because I'm born at a certain time under a certain house that has anything to do with me creating the life that I want to have, right? So many people will, though, and because they do, they'll select, like, oh, I saw 11:11 on the clock. Well, you've seen 2:36 on the clock and 4:18 on the clock, but you're looking for 11:11. Well, then that's your reality, because that's where your attention is, right? So I don't subscribe to that, but I respect that, because that person is going to keep that belief until it no longer serves them, and they're either going to evolve their belief or they're not. And if they don't, so be it. But if they do, they're going to realize sooner or later it's not working for them. I have certain beliefs right now that I honestly am questioning, that I still think are limited beliefs. But in order for me to change those beliefs, I'm going to have to come out of my resting state, have to step out into the unknown and really check to see and execute in a very different way. Now, to build on that model, then it's going to require 1 foot in the practical world and 1 foot in the mysterious world. Sure. Because I can't control all the events that happen in my life, but I can certainly make choices that are going to bring me closer to those experiences. Now, I also know from experience that when I'm living by the hormones of stress and I'm living in survival, that you and I and everybody else is always going to try to control the outcome, to try to force the outcome, to try to get in the way, try to analyze when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen. Now, when that occurs, we're really bad. We're competitive, we're manipulative, we'll hold on to things, we're deceitful, we're greedy, because that's what those chemicals do. So we're always trying to control and force the outcome because, in a sense, we feel separate from something greater. We feel like we're matter trying to change matter. We feel like we're vibrating at the same speed as everything else, and so we have to get what we want, means we have to go and get it. And so then people start mixing spiritual principles with that phenomenon, right? So then that's not what I'm talking about, because I'm talking about if you're able to understand that when you're living by the hormones of stress, that your senses are heightened and that you're a materialist trying to define reality. If you can't see it, feel it, taste it, smell it, it doesn't exist, and you're getting ready for something bad to happen and be prepared and protect yourself, and that's how most people live, then everybody's doing that. Everybody's matter trying to change matter, and sooner or later we're going to bump into each other and there's going to be sparks, right? So then, is it possible then that instead of being defined as a body, living in an environment in a particular time, that if you were to close your eyes and disconnect from the external environment, to sit your body down and to transcend time and to become nobody, you have the biological machinery to do this, to become no one. You're not a face, you're not a man, you're not a documentary filmmaker, you're not your past, you're not your future, you're not a husband, you're not your body, you're not your emotions, you're not your habits, you're not the predictable future or the familiar past. You're pure consciousness. Now, if you are going to heal your body by thought alone, if you are going to create some event in your external environment by thought alone, and if you are going to transcend time by thought alone, then you have to become thought alone. And so when people start to really realize that they can change the neurocircuitry in their brain by thought alone, send new emotional signals that begin to select and upregulate new genes and downregulate other genes, and it may take knocking on that door for extended periods of time till finally the gene is programmed. Because it took them 10 years to program the gene for the disease, it may take them a few years to reprogram the gene. Now we're talking about pragmatist. We're talking about someone who's applying some principles. And so then when that occurs, and the energy that was sitting in these hormonal centers of survival, of anger and fear and guilt and shame, the energy kind of moves up a little bit. We've measured this. Heart starts to open, gets more coherent. The field around the body begins to grow. We've measured that. The person feels more like energy, less like matter. They feel like more like wave, less like particle. They're not afraid of the unknown. Mm-hmm. They're craving and they're trusting in the unknown. And that kind of expanded energy is now they're no longer enslaved emotionally to the past. They're no longer an identity that's connected to a disease. They're no longer a body who's addicted to an emotion. They're no longer trying to forecast the future based on the past. They're no longer a man, they're no longer a woman, they're no longer a nurse, they're no longer black, they're no longer white, they're no longer anything. They are completely poised in the present moment. And that present moment produces a liberation of energy because the body is no longer held to the chains of the past. And that liberation of energy then begins to produce a biological transformation in the brain and the body. We've seen it. The brain gets highly coherent, gets super organized. The person feels whole. We've measured that. Their heart moves into a state of joy and love and gratitude. We measured that. The field around their bodies and hands. We measure that. And the person could no longer cares about the future or the past. They're happy in the present moment. They no longer want anything because they're whole. And if you're whole, it's impossible to want. And that's the moment it happens. And so kind of this paradox that begins to occur. So why am I explaining it like this? Because I want to answer the ultimate question of what you're asking, is that there's an intelligence that's giving us life. It's keeping my heart beating and digesting my food and organizing trillions of functions per second in every cell of my body. I'm not doing that. I'm having a conversation with you as a free-willed, subjective consciousness. But there's an intelligence within me that's always endorsing who I'm being. And that intelligence is a giver of life. So to demystify it then, and this is where I part from the spiritual community. Because when your will matches its will, when your mind matches its mind, when your love for life matches its love for life, it begins to work in ways that are mysterious. Now, why is that important? Because the mysterious is the unknown, and the unknown is unexpected, and the unexpected should bring a surprise, and that surprise should be outside of my current beliefs. If it's happening, how could I expect the supernatural to happen if I'm expecting it to happen? It's impossible. But if I'm in the unknown and I'm open to possibility, then I should be able to create an unknown experience that I can't predict the emotion or the future event of how it's going to occur or when it's going to occur. It's not my job. And the side effect of that is this mysterious surprise that changes my biology from the new experience and then causes me to change my beliefs. And I've had enough of my own mystical moments. In the midst of that mystical experience, I have said in the midst of it, I have this all wrong. I have said it right in the midst of the experience. I am doing this so wrong because I was so programmed into this box of belief. But the only way the unexpected could happen is giving up expectation, which means you have to surrender that belief. How it's going to happen or when it's going to happen, I can't predict that. So then that same intelligence that's giving me life according to the quantum model of reality is the same intelligence that's creating supernovas and causing flowers to bloom. It's within us and all around us. It's a very wave of quantum physics. I can't control that. I can't expect how the particle is going to appear or when it's going to appear, but it's not my job. My job is to move into different states of being and be open to the mystery of how it's going to happen. So if I said to you today, Ben, that I had all the answers to everything, I would certainly be limiting this conversation. But I am open to the mystery of life. Mm-hmm. And the mystery of life then means that if we're asking certain questions and we even speculate that it's possible, then someone has to step out of their present beliefs to see if it is. And so I'm not interested in the natural. I'm not interested in the normal. I'm interested in the supernatural, the supernormal. And I believe, from my present state of ignorance, of course, if we're going to use the word belief, that you don't have to be a Buddhist monk. You don't have to be a nun with 40 years of devotion. You don't have to be a religious scholar. You don't have to be a researcher. You don't have to have a PhD to do this. That common people around the world can do the uncommon. And if they're given the right understanding and the environment is set up where they can begin the application of that. And I have looked at over 1,000 brain scans of people in meditation. And I can tell you that you and I are at our absolute best when we get beyond our analytical mind. When we get beyond ourselves. That's the moment that the brain gets so organized and so coherent. The front of the brain's talking to the back of the brain, the right side of the brain's talking to the left side of the brain. There's this synchronization, this psychic union going on.
Like a flow.
And the person has tears of joy rolling down their face. That gestalt moment, that transcendent event for the person is completely subjective. But my interest is measuring that subjective experience.
True.
And we're capturing amplitudes of energy in people's brains that are 26,000 to 40,000 times normal during that experience. Now, they can't make their brain do that. It's happening to them. And the inner event that's happening to them is more real than any past event. And that's the moment I know their belief is changing.